Whew, okay, yeah, this took too long to make, but we're finally getting to it. In 2 parts here, we might do a small 3-parter if we can get to it, I don't know. Again, thank you so much for your patience in this particular vid. I'm working on getting the Patreon revamped with some new pledge rewards, and hopefully we can open up those Patreon requests soon here. But fair warning, there will likely be some big changes as to how we do things with those. Look, we gotta control the ebb and flow of those requests so that I don't get avalanched like last time. That means they'll likely either be for a limited time only, or there'll be a limited number of requests per month. The price might go up, something like that. I'll let you know more once my new Patreon updates go live, but I mean, a lot of you have said you want to give, and I'm just giving you a friendly heads up here. Thanks again to all of you who contributed to make these reviews possible. Okay, let's get this train rolling with an album I got a ton of requests for. Australia's Parkway Drive is one of those bands I've caught in passing several times, oftentimes when I let Spotify Radio or Pandora take the wheel and choose something for me to listen to. Yeah, some of their tracks will inevitably come up in passing, and what I've heard from them here and there, I admittedly like, but this is my first full go-around with them. I don't know why precisely, but the handful of individual tracks that have flown my way, they've never, stopped me dead in my tracks and had me full-blown go, oh, I have to hear more of these guys right now, right friggin' now, oh my god, or anything like that. I was a bit worried in finally sinking my teeth into a full album that I was probably going to like 1 or 2 songs, get tired of it really fast, and then have to say, there's some positives, some negatives, like I sometimes do. But holy hell, did I pick the right album to jump into fresh. Wow, this thing's fucking great. For one, it's absolutely brutal. Remember in the last Bad Album covers where I mentioned that the ripples and waves of Pantera's influence could be felt even in today's music? Yeah. Here's exactly what I'm talking about. The riffs here are thick, heavy, and explosive. Winston McCall's vocals are searing, blood-soaked, and absolutely menacing. And Ben Gordon's drums are a goddamn cattle stampede. The dude is absolutely brilliant with his tom rolls and fill work. He's all over the place, but he knows precisely when to draw everything back and let the band take the forefront as well. This album? This is heavy as shit, and I love it. But here's the thing, remember how I said that other work I'd heard from these guys didn't quite get me to lose my nuggets or anything? Well, after being impressed by this album, I went back and tried to listen to a few of their other works, and wasn't nearly as impressed. But here, there is an extra something that pushes it over the edge for me. Melody. This album has a terrific balance of heavy, punishing throwdowns, but it also has a fair amount of catchiness and hooks to its song composition, as well as some great slower moments too, like the opening to Wishing Wells, Cemetery Bloom, and Color of Leaving. It's a much more interesting mix-up of styles and compositions, and it shows that this band has more than just blah blah up their sleeves. It's really intriguing. I'll put it this way, you know that sound that Immure, Attila, and all those other edgecore bullshitters try to pull off? Okay, this is that sound done right. This is what motherfucking Immure should sound like. It's not quite perfect. I would have loved to have seen a bit more interesting lead work here and there, maybe some more developed bass lines and such, but a lot of the complaints I have are nitpicky shit. This is a great example of richness and variety in a genre that is so achingly desperate for it. Reverence gets 4.5 metalcore apologists out of 5. Let's move on to something a little more traditional? Is that the word I'm looking for here? Kamelot. They're a power metal institution that's been at it since 1991. They've been going strong for decades now. But I have a bit of an embarrassing confession to make here. I only first heard of these guys through that fuck awful PM rants video from way back in the day. God, this has to be the most obscure reference I've ever made.
Suicide Silence isn't music. I should know because I listen to Kamelot. With a key. With a key. With a key.
Holy shit, this guy makes Tim Buckley look like Kurt goddamn Vonnegut. But admittedly, after the biggest waste of 13 minutes I'd ever sat through in my life, I did actually go out and dig up some Kamelot with a key out of curiosity, and I found them to be pretty tight. Credit where it's due? I don't know. Again, they're a solid as hell power metal outfit with some damn fine songwriting chops, some absolutely terrific performances under their belts, and a beautiful touch of symphonic melody and instrumentation that isn't too overwhelming, along with just the right amount of prog-style composition and general song structure to keep their music interesting without having it all disappear right up their own ass, you know? Kamelot is a terrific group. I'm always happy to see them come around. And Shadow Theory is another great release from them. It's a lovely, vibrant, and rich album of sweeping orchestral interludes, soaring guitar solos, and hard rock melodies, along with a wonderful sense of bravado and fun. This is a good Kamelot album, I'd say. And, that's all it is. I've often said that there's nothing inherently wrong with one-trick ponies as long as they're really, really good at their one trick. And I'd argue that Kamelot definitely falls into that category. Hell, these guys have been consistently great for longer than most of you watching have probably been alive. They've got nothing else they need to prove, but that does make my job a little difficult in some respects, because while I wholeheartedly enjoy this album, it's just not terribly different from a good deal of the other stuff they've done. It's not, especially lately. It's not some bold new reinvention. It's not a subversion of any expectations. It's just another Kamelot record, and your ability to get excited about that will depend on whatever feelings you already have for Kamelot ingrained into you, if you have any at all. Me, I like Kamelot, so to me this is another great go-around with them. But I'd be lying if I said that this was a bold or experimental album. It's par for the course. Power or symphonic metal peeps? Hey, this is an easy recommendation for you. But if you aren't into those particular genres, will this be the album that converts you? I don't think so. Again, hard pill to swallow here. Kamelot is just not the most innovative band in the world, but they still kick ass at what they do, and I'm always happy to get new material from them. Hey, if this sounds like it's up your alley, go for it. The Shadow Theory gets 4 Black Halos out of 5. Let's transition from the tried but true to the complete wackadoo. Turbowolf. They're a band that's been humming around in the underground for a bit here, and although they've yet to make their big splash, they've been making more than a few subtle waves. And after finally getting around to them with this request, I can totally understand why. This is an interesting project. Whereas it's easy as hell to slot a band like Kamelot into certain genres, these guys, wow, you so cannot do that with them. They're equal parts Smashing Pumpkins, as they are Black Sabbath, as they are Thin Lizzy. They're an outright eclectic mix of classic 70s rock and heavy metal, 80s punk, and even bits of 90s grunge thrown in there. They're like a walking, breathing timeline of rock history, all smashed together into one band. Their sound is a bangin', bouncing, and fun brand of high-energy stomper tracks peppered with some absolutely infectious and dense riff work. This stuff has boogie, but it also has a fair amount of slam to it. It's fierce, but fun. Honestly, if a band is going to so blatantly throw back to all their influences, this is how you do it effectively. I can tell that these guys probably spun the hell out of Siamese Dream, Group Sex, and Volume 4, without just hearing a bunch of flat-out rip-offs from Corgan, Heston, or Iami, respectively. All this swing and swagger is further accentuated by some kick-ass features, no less, from people like Chantel Brown, Joe Talbot of Idols, and Royal Blood's Mike Kerr. It's not, like, the deepest album in the world, but Lord knows it's not trying to beat Dostoevsky or anything. Look, I'll be damned if this isn't one of the most fun albums I've heard of the year, and my god, did 2018 need some fun injected into it. Real talk, 2018 has been really boring on most musical fronts, and this album serves as a nice dash of vitality and spice to help add some color to the lifeless heap of gray that this year has been shaping up to be. I will certainly be keeping my eye on these guys in the future. This was a nice one to catch. The Free Life gets 4.5 Wicked stashes out of 5. You know, I don't know exactly what it is, but this year I've gotten a fair amount of requests for stoner rock stuff, which kinda surprises me personally, and it makes me feel a little awkward whenever one of these albums comes across my desk because, I mean, outside of the occasional social get-together or whatever, you know, I don't partake. I mean, I know the hair, the clothes, the way I talk, etc. I know I give off that impression, but I'm not a stoner. I'm just a giant dork. So I always feel a wee bit underqualified to talk about albums like this because, well, I'm never listening to them under the appropriate conditions, so to speak. But, well, for whatever my amateur-ass opinion may be worth, here's my 2 cents on the latest Sleep. It's pretty good. Sleep have always been really good at that whole down-tuned, sludgy, sinister-sounding brand of doom and stoner metal. Hell, they're modern gods of the genre, right up there with guys like High on Fire, Caius, Electric Wizard, etc., etc. And hell, if you're gonna try to get into this genre, Sleep is probably one of the first people you should be looking up. I mean, Masters of Reality is the very first thing you should look up, but these guys sure as hell wouldn't be far behind. And you know, I gotta give props where they're due. I love a band that is totally 100% in on their own joke. There is not a drop of pretentiousness with these guys, and I love that. Songs like The Botanist and Marijuana Knot basically tell you exactly what you're getting on the tin, and hell, the rampant Sabbath worshipping is laid completely bare on the track Giza Butler. Get it? It's a really digestible and easy to take in kind of Sleep album. Sleep are really, really good at what they do, and it's clear that they have a lot of fun doing it. It's hard to listen to an album like this and not at least get, like, a contact buzz from how fully committed they are to their sound and how committed they are to the blaze. It's fun. It's a good time. But, and this is gonna sound really weird, it's also kinda got Kamelot's problem, in that, you know, this sure as hell sounds like a Sleep album and absolutely nothing else. Granted, it's not to Kamelot's extent. Sleep may be a bit on the formulaic side, but no one can say they aren't experimental or willing to take bold steps. These guys have an album that's nothing but a 63-minute song built around one riff. No one can say these guys aren't bold, but I don't know, they exhibit a lot of the same problems that a lot of stoner-centric music just has in general. A lot of it just sounds like itself. It doesn't reinvent the wheel. Oh, but is this a wheel that needs to be reinvented? There's nothing wrong with being a one-trick pony if you're really good at your one trick. And yeah, I'd say Sleep are easily one of the best at their particular trick, and this album helps to further illustrate that point by giving us some solid, trippy, straight up hallucinogenic music to help permeate and prolong your buzz. It's great, and if you're into stoner metal, of course, this is a absolute must buy. I'm just saying, if you aren't down with that, there's probably not going to be a lot here for you, you know? But hey, no one can argue that Sleep doesn't deliver exactly what their audience wants out of them, and they deliver it really, really goddamn well. This is another hell of a release from these guys, and even my lame, non-smoking ass can see how wonderful this album is, even if it's not entirely my scene, man. The Sciences gets 4 pharmacologies out of 5. Oh boy, got a lot of requests for this one, as I do whenever Jack White releases an album, or starts another side project, or breathes air, or eats food, or farts in the goddamn wind. I always gotta hear about it. Always. And forever. The thing is, I don't think people want me to talk about this album. They're not looking for my opinion on this album. They're not looking for insight on this album. They just want me to praise Senpai! Oh, Senpai Jack White! Senpai Jack White! Senpai Jack White has blessed us with classic rock again, and yes indeed, hooray! Praise be to Senpai, glory be to Senpai, I bend over and receive Senpai with glory, Senpai Jack White, Senpai Jack White, Senpai Jack White! Is that what you want? Is that what you need out of me? Just more validation? Well, let me just break your heart in one gigantic swoop. I am not the biggest Jack White fan in the world. I'm sorry, I'm not. It's not even like I hate the guy or anything. His work with the White Stripes was really influential, and it helped break the rock scene out of a long stretch of monotony and sadness that had been plaguing it for a good long while. The White Stripes helped us collectively kinda get over ourselves, and I am very, very thankful for their contributions to music. The White Stripes were incredible and great, and they will go down as one of the most legendary rock bands to have come out of this era. But I'm sorry, people, Jack White is not this god character he's been molded into in recent years, and I'm just gonna flat out say it. Jack White will never, ever do anything more interesting than his work with the White Stripes. Come at me, dude! But, like, his stuff with the Raconteurs was pretty cool, admittedly, but I can take it or leave it, you know? None of his other side projects has mustered up anything more than a vague acceptance out of me. Yes, even the Dead Weather, don't ask. And his solo work just isn't that compelling. The guy just isn't that interesting to me. His stuff outside of the Stripes has always had to beg to get my attention, and this album is absolutely, positively no different. It's just more Jack White. That's it. Hell, if I felt like being a real asshole, I could have easily put this in that last 3-for-all I did, you know, where the theme was being boring and thoroughly unexciting. God, this album would have fit in there like nobody's business. Oh, people are gonna kill me for this review, I can already tell. But you know, I know I showed my teeth kind of early in this review, but it does suck to say that, because even though I'm not big on a lot of the post-Stripes work Jack has done, I'll admit this is one of the more out there mix-ups I've heard from the guy. This album features a lot more keyboard work, electronica, sampling. It has a whole other feel from Jack White's usual sort of shtick. It's outside of his usual wheelhouse, I'll give it that. But Jack White just absolutely positively cannot help but smear his Jack White all over everything he touches, can he? Everything he ever does is just soaked in that same old blues, early rock and roll veneer. There is just no other music to Jack White outside of blues, 70s country, and 50s rock. Nothing whatsoever. There's no other music than those three genres. There is nothing else. Nothing else. No, nothing. The 80s never happened. The 90s never happened. Elvis Presley is still alive and well, and even when Jack White comes, I imagine it leaves a stain in the shape of the old Sun Records logo. Dude's just so predictable. It sounds like every other Jack White album ever, except this one's been plugged into an old Atari ST for some reason. Look, as someone that's never carried much of a torch for the guy, I fail to see why I'm supposed to be so excited about this. I mean, if you like Jack White, if he's ya boy, I'm positive this is gonna be your jam. It's not offensive or, downright sickening or anything, but to me, it's just another Jack White album, and no amount of beeps and boops can hide the same damn shit I've heard from this guy over and over and over again since Icky Thump. Look, I'm sorry if that breaks your heart, but just... Jack, can you do anything else? Can you do anything else, my dude? Boarding House Reach gets 2.5 Elvis is still alive conspiracies out of 5. Oh, okay, it's out of my system. I promise. I'm done. Let's jump on to something a bit more exciting, shall we? And by exciting, I of course mean... Judas motherfucking Priest. Yeah, it's been well stated that I'm more of a Maiden guy personally. I mean, if you're gonna make me draw that barrier, you know where my loyalties lie. But god damn it, I do have to give it up to Priest for making it such a close rivalry. I mean, Killing Machine, British Steel, Screaming for Vengeance, Ram It Down, Painkiller, so much classic stuff from these guys. No one can argue that they aren't one of the greatest, most definitive bands in the metal genre. And then Halford quit the band. Oh. Like a lot of other metal bands back in the day, the 90s were just so cruel to these guys. There's definitely an episode I need to make about Priest somewhere down the line. But, that's old news. Halford has been back in the band for well over a decade now, and while Angel of Retribution was a solid returning record, whoo boy, this band seems to have had way more trouble getting their footing back than Maiden did back when they had to replace Bruce Dickinson. Nostradamus, while ambitious as all fuck, was just an overly long, bloated, and needlessly cryptic mess. And while Redeemer of Souls was admittedly better, there was still a lot of fatigue lingering around with these guys. KK Downing's departure left a really big void. They were still writing these flabby, needlessly long-winded pieces, and Halford's vocals were really starting to crack. I mean, I love Judas Priest, but after that album, I was wondering just how many more times they could ram it down before they ended up living after midnight, So I went into this one actually not expecting to be blown away. Holy shit, looks like I had another thing coming. Woo! Man, people have been telling me Judas Priest is back for years now, but only with this album have I really felt like that statement was officially true. Good lord, all of the things I love about Priest are finally back in full order. The speed, intensity, and energy that was absent from their last few albums has returned, and it's good to see one of the original fathers of speed metal actually being speedy again. Isn't that great? The album flies open with the eponymous track and Lightning Strike, and from those tracks we very rarely ever pump the brakes on this release. The music is fast, loud, and the lead work is raging and prominent in the mix. No song goes over 6 minutes, and everything feels extremely tight, well composed and excellently performed. Even on those few moments where they do bring things down to a bit more of a mid-tempo groove, it never loses its steam. Songs like Children of the Sun and Never the Heroes maintain their power and drive thanks to some wonderful drum work by Scott Travis and some nice melodies being laid out by Richie Faulkner. Man, again, replacing the legendary KK Downing is not an enviable task by any stretch of the imagination. But on this record, I feel like Faulkner has finally pulled through and delivered some very tasty lick work that is worthy of a Priest release. And Rob, oh, he just sounds so much more energized and capable here. Like, seriously, his performance on the last two albums was so worn out and dogged sounding, I was starting to worry that he was losing his trademark shriek after all these years. I was genuinely concerned. But on this album, he's screaming for vengeance more viciously than he has in over a decade. Oh, Rob, it's good to have you back, my dude. It is so good to hear Priest back at 100%. I was half convinced we'd never get an album this good out of them again, but here they finally delivered and given us one hell of an outing. Man, if they wanted to, they could probably retire on this album and call it a career on one of the biggest high notes they've had in over 20 years. They could retire on this album if they wanted to. But I don't want them to now. Man, this album fucking wrecks. Firepower gets 5 powder kegs out of 5.